Hey, welcome back to another edition of Everything Football 62. I'm your host, Jonathan Big Tex Johnson, a.k.a. Uncle Tex, a.k.a. Professor Tex. Before we get started, you guys share the video, subscribe to the page. Got any questions, concerns, leave them down there below. Let me start off right now real quick, like on the type of what my channel is all about. First and foremost, I admire a lot of guys got the channels that they like say sportscasters and stuff like that, like my man Microphone and whatnot. Kind of enjoy some of his stuff and whatnot. But that's really not. I wanted to go that route, but I'm really not about going that route simply because I don't really have the time or energy to do that. I want to sit down in front of the mic, sit down and get it going on quickly as possible. That's kind of what I want to do. As you can tell, anything might be going on with me and whatnot. And it's just an old guy sitting up here who watched a lot of football in his time and loved the sport, as I often refer to it as a beautiful violence, and and enjoy me a cigar, have me a nice drink and whatnot, and chop it up and talk football. I'm not the one that's going to sit back. I don't really care for ESPN. I don't care for NFL Network. I don't care for any of that stuff now. This stuff used to be great back in the day. It's garbage to me now. Some chick up there leading the damn table. I don't get it. Guys do whatever they got to do to feed their families. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. We all have to make sacrifices for different things like that when we have to feed our families. So you do what you do. And that's fine. But doesn't mean that I'm going to watch it. I watch ESPN for college football and whenever they do an NFL game. I watch NFL Network for whenever I'm watching the game. If a commercial come on, I can always go there because they have live. They have the ticker, and you go there and you can sit up there and find out. You can catch some highlights of games that you're not seeing in your area, and you can get the score and some highlights. And that's the cool part about it. Other than that, those channels mean absolutely nothing to me and whatnot. I want to talk about football. When I came up as a youngster and whatnot, it was about football. I didn't know, nor did I care. I didn't have any concept of what them guys did off the field and whatnot and all that. You're talking about guys in their early 20s that going into their mid 30s and stuff playing the game. And you don't know what they do. You don't know how they do what they do. They just do it. It's not until you become the age you find out that, okay, that's a job. That's what they do for a living. They're going to have issues with family. They're going to have issues with their women. They're going to have issues with the and different things like that. Just like in the real world, as we say, you're going to have issues with your family. You're going to have issues with your woman. You're going to have issues at your job. You won't get along with every teammate. You won't get along with every coworker. That's just kind of how that thing works. Okay. And so that's what I look at. So I'm a guy that comes on cigar, drink in hand and whatnot, and like to talk football. First and foremost, I'm a fan of the sport first and foremost and whatnot. This Homer stuff is getting outrageous. I don't like the Homer stuff, especially because I'm going to segue into this, especially when we start talking about Hall of Fame. Y'all know I'm really big on that type of stuff and whatnot. And I told y'all a couple of years ago when they hit the 100th year anniversary, I said when they let a lot of guys in, I think that might have been 2020, 2021 or whatever, I'm like, they're letting everybody in. It should be no more than 6 or 7 guys going in per year. Every guy that plays in the NFL does not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Sorry. Just because you had a year or two doesn't make you in the Hall of Fame. You have to be extraordinary for that to even happen. When you play it short, when you don't play that long of a time. I've oftentimes told you guys, I said, when I look at the career of what a Hall of Famer needs to do, he has to play 9 or 10 years. They have to be top 2 or 3 in their position for a 4 or 5 year stretch. It's going to be some years, going to be up and down or whatever like that. But however, they represented for half a decade. And that might be from ages from 23 to 29, 28, 29 years old, especially if you're a running back. But any of that. And then still finish our strong, maybe make some Pro Bowls, but you may not make the all-pro team, first team or second team, but you're still somewhat of a respected player at your position, and you're still highly considered at your position. And man, he's still somebody you got to take a look at. Because something that RG3 was talking about the other day, which I thought was great when he broke down about, and I'm going to go into that whole thing about the whole running back situation. Y'all give thanks to Mike Shanahan for that, starting that particular trend. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about here. I ran across this article the other day. I was actually at work, and I ran across this article. State your case, Larry Brown should never lose Hall's attention. And as a youngster, I remember looking at, I ran across a book in the library. The only thing I would go to the library is to look up old football stuff. Uh, old, I would look up things, past yearbooks of my high school and the football teams, because our football team was pretty good. They wasn't no powerhouse, but they either won district and got the playoffs, 1 or 2 rounds, and then they were done. And it's still pretty much like that to this day, although last year was a good run. And I would also check out football encyclopedias from that of previous years, different books, so 72, 73, 74, and all that type of stuff. So I remember seeing Larry Brown. I've seen quite a lot of highlights of him. And Larry Brown, and let's look his stuff up real quick. And we're on the subject. Larry Brown, because I'm gonna say this before I go into all that, we're gonna do this here. We want to scroll down, and it was something that was said because this guy, what's his name? Damn, what's this guy's name? I thought I saw his name the other day. John Tunney or something like that. I can't think of the gentleman's name who wrote this particular article. This is just from the other day. And so he basically, Larry Brown was saying that he said, I should be there in Canton based on performance and talent. I was comparable to some inductees. Brown once told the Washington Post, I thought it would happen. The rumors is I didn't play long enough. Now, go to his numbers. From 69 to 72, Larry Brown was one of the top backs in the game. In 1970, he led the league in rushing, and he had the yards per game. Okay, skip to 72. I think they played in the Super Bowl against the Dolphins. He had 12, 16, 8 touchdowns, and he averaged 101 yards per game. Yards from scrimmage, 1689. And I think he ended up having close to that of 8. Let me see here. He finished with 12 touchdowns altogether and whatnot. And so, and he was the MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. Hell of a game. Hell of a season. Okay? That was his apex. If we go back and look at from 69 to 72, Larry Brown, who was 181st pick, if I'm not mistaken, 8th round from out of Kansas State. He had 4,177 yards and 21 touchdowns, just doing rushing for that matter. And the first team All-Pro, Offensive Player of the Year, as well as NFL MVP. That's when running backs meant something to the NFL. Okay. Now, ironically enough, in 69, you also had a Ron Johnson who played for the Giants, who was a hell of a back. You had Lawrence McCutcheon. You had a ton of backs back during the 70s that did really good. Franco Harris, a lot of guys like that, whether Zonka, who played fullback, but he was still their guy. But go back to O.J. Simpson. From 69 to 1971, O.J. Simpson did not live up to the hype that he was when he came out of USC, who happened to be my favorite player as a kid in the 70s and whatnot. I remember having a T-shirt and had a markup with 32 on it, had a helmet and the whole 9 yards. Loved the game before I even had a team. I wasn't even a Bills fan. I just loved O.J. Simpson. So in 1972, your 2 All-Pro first-team backs were O.J. Simpson and that of Larry Brown. Football is a game of inches. It's a call away. It's a missed call, a hold, or something like that, a pass interference that completely, or late hit, that completely turned the game completely around. Same can be spoken for when we're talking about a career and why your career didn't turn out to be what what you thought it was going to be because you was headed that way. You was on the right path, but something along the line came about, and it just didn't happen. That happened with Larry Brown. Okay, that happened with Larry Brown. Larry Brown at 72, he was done. And we're talking about at age 25, where he basically topped out. 12-16. That's when he was MVP. He did everything. Super Bowl, they lost Super Bowl 7-14. So one of the things that happened, but let's go to the juice. The juice wasn't really doing anything. The juice at that particular time, from 69 to 72, 3,178 yards, 18 touchdowns. First team All-Pro, but he led the league in rushing in 72. Beat old boy out by about 50, 60 yards, something like that. 30, 40 yards, something to that effect. He had the longest run in NFL that year. And he was right there, and he placed third in MVP and second in Offensive Player of the Year. They gave it to Larry Brown. Now, from 72 to 76, O.J. Simpson was the best back in football. Not only was he the best back in football, arguably he was the best. He was the best player in football at that particular time. Meanwhile, Larry Brown at this particular time, from 72 to 76, went from 860, 430, 352, 56 yards. By age 29, finished. This is why Larry Brown is not in the Hall of Fame. This has nothing to do with the aspect of Larry Brown not being a very good back. He was a very good back. You have to, just like your coach will tell you, you have to finish the game off. You have to finish it. He didn't finish it. He may say, or you may have Redskins fans that would say, well, hey, man, he's supposed to, he was that. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. He did this, he did that. No. And he literally took the mantle from that of a Gale Sayers, who only played 65 games. And I said, and go back to what he was saying. Well, I've done this, that. I said, but you didn't do it for a long period of time. And you didn't finish up. You were done at 25. That was your last time that you did anything. Now we go to Gale Sayers. 4-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. Gale Sayers had a rookie year that's for the ages. No one could ever take that away from him. You're talking about someone that every couple of times he touched the ball, he had a touchdown. He led the league with 20 some odd touchdowns. Let me see. He's in that, and go to YouTube. One of the greatest individual performances that you'll ever see from that of Gale Sayers is against the 49ers when he had like 6 touchdowns and should have had 7. I'm always a conspiracy theorist when it comes to that, but hey, it is what it is. Should have had 7. In the mud, doing everything possible. So he finished with 14 touchdowns. He had 14 rushing touchdowns, 20, and he finished, and he had a kick return and a punt return. So he had 22 touchdowns. He had 22 touchdowns, which led the league completely. You look at what Gale Sayers did and was done playing by 71. 71 was last year. He's done 28. From age 22 to 26, the things that he did, he led the league in rushing twice. Larry Brown led the league in rushing once. One time. Okay? Now, we go to this, and this is one of the telling signs right here. If you want to go there, I tell guys, this, numbers don't lie, get emotional, people do. Unfortunately, I don't think Gale Sayers ever went to a playoff. But look at the carnage that he left on defenses and what he did when they knew he was going to get the ball, and he did what he did, and you still had nothing for him. That's a Hall of Famer. Even when you have nothing. Dick Buck is on a losing team on the same squad because they're linked together because they came in at the same time, 2 first rounders. and was the best and is considered the best. He was Barry Sanders before Barry Sanders. Okay, Dick Butkus was Defensive Player of the Year on one of the worst teams that ever took the field of an NFL football game. And he was still voted Defensive Player of the Year. If you look at the kicks and punt returns, and you go to that of all-purpose yards receiving, rushing, receiving, kick, and punts, you're talking about somebody who led the league from 65 to 67. 2,272 yards, 2,440 yards in 1689. This is back when your best back, your best player on the team, especially if he's a running back, he returned punts and kicks, and he played in the backfield. Okay, so that's why Gale Sayers went in the Hall of Fame at the time that he did at the age of 32. That's why. That's why he did that. Nobody else is doing that. Remember, by the time he came in the league, he was about 45, 46 years old. Okay? Got to look at the errors and what these guys and the carnage that they left and the damage that they did and the plays that they made during that particular time, why those guys are in the Hall of Fame. These guys that are putting up a lot of numbers nowadays and whatnot, it's a different era, different time. And the caveat with a lot of this stuff, because I remember I was going to do, and I told you guys I was going to actually do, and I decided not to do it, was the thing on Brandon Marshall. There was no need. Brandon Marshall never went to the playoffs. Brandon Marshall played 13, 14 years, 6, 7 different teams. Pro Bowl 5 or 6 times. Very good wide receiver. Didn't have any wheels. And the 2 times when he put up his best numbers over 1,500 yards receiving, both the teams went 10-6. 20-12. And they still missed the playoffs. So they missed the playoffs. So a lot of his yards on losing squads came by what? Junk yards, we call them. They're junk yards because if you're playing from behind, if you're getting beat 35-15, you're just throwing the ball and the team is going to prevent defense. And you're just getting yards. That's not to take away from what the man did. That shows you that those yards meant nothing. That's like somebody making 20, that's like a linebacker making 20 tackles, and the amount of tackles, but he made 15 of them 20 yards downfield. The other 5 he made maybe in a 3 or 4 yard, 2 or 3 yard game. He had 20. He's making them downfield. That's great hustling, not to take away from that. However, he made 15 of his tackles after first downs. It's about what you do between 1 and 3 yards. And I always prided myself, even when I was in high school, you celebrated a tackle 1, 2, 3 yard game. When they start doing 4, 5, and 6, and you make them tackle, it ain't nothing to celebrate about because they made 5, 6 yards a lick on. So there's nothing to celebrate at all. Okay, so that's what happened there. You go to O.J. Simpson, go to the Juice. So he 1251. Him and Brown are the first team running backs in the NFL. The Juice, from the next year, from 72 to 76, he would lead the league for 4 times out of 5 years. He led the league 4 times, and he put up the best rushing 2 of the years. He put up some of the best rushing stats in the league that has seen in 50 some odd years of the game at the time, and it's still up there. His 2,003 yards is still talked about to this day, basically because he did it in 14 games. You cannot, even though he went to the playoffs 1 time. That's what you have to do to be regarded as the best. You can't take your yards in 2000 and let's say 15 and say, well, I had more yards than the Juice. Dude, you're playing in 16 game schedule and you're getting the ball, you're getting draws, and y'all are down 15 and all. It doesn't mean anything. You would have to lead the league in rushing. So even OJ was doing what he did. Guess what? He still led the league. When you had 8 box front up there on him, he still led the league 4 times out of 5 years. And then you got guys like Otis Armstrong would come in and have a hell of a year. 1407, 9 touchdowns. He finished with 12 touchdowns altogether, few receiving. He would get another 1,000 yards and 76 2 years later. After that, he's a footnote. That's not to take anything away from Mr. Anderson. Armstrong, as you say. It's not to take anything away from him. But you have Denver Bronco fans screaming and yelling, well, he should be in. No, he shouldn't be. No. Ron Johnson, no, he shouldn't be. No, sorry, guys. It doesn't work that way. Lawrence McCutcheon, no. Love Lawrence McCutcheon, hell of a back. Rams had some good teams back in the mid-'70s. 5-time Pro Bowler. He wasn't one of those guys, though. He didn't do that. Eric Dickerson, Earl Campbell, Barry Sanders. Those are guys who played on traditionally. And even with Eric Dickerson, 83, 84, 85, 86, 83, 84, 85, 86, for the 4 years they went to the playoffs. With Dickerson being, he's going to get the ball because they don't have no quarterback. Ed Kemp, no, you can't even name their quarterback. You can't name their quarterback. You can't name him. So it's like, so since you can't name him, and Kemp, and it was some other guy, I can't remember this guy's fucking name. So that's what you have to do to be considered a Hall of Famer. That's why I said about Corey Dillon. That's what I said about Fred Taylor. Guys played on traditionally bad teams and did not. So what is going to separate you from everybody else? Because no, if you're playing 16 games, you should have 1,000 yards. And I say at the very least, if you're playing 16 games, 1,200 yards. At the very least. 1,900. Yeah, that's nice, but if you're not really touching the ball that much, but if you're the main back and that's all you get, 1,000, that looks good. What did you do with it? Junk yards. No all-pro teams. None of that. They just did. Cincinnati just named their players in their Ring of Fame. Boomer Esiason and Chad Ocho and Chad Johnson. Love Chad Johnson. I always said, and I had this argument with this guy once, I said, he bullshitted his way. Should have had every aspect of the game. 3-time Pro, 4 or 5-time Pro. I mean, he did it all. Team never did anything but a couple years. And Chad wanted to sit up there and play, wanted to play that game where he basically bullshitted his way and he didn't take the game serious. He played too much. That's why I don't see him getting in the Hall of Fame anytime soon. 66 touchdowns. Q, where's the 80, 90, or 100? Had a quarterback, but you didn't do anything. You got a lot of junk yards. That's what they look at. The Hall of Fame could be very meticulous, and I get it. But in other ways, now, most like today's society, it's giving away, because he played. Nah. You have to separate yourself from the pack. And there's nothing that Chad did to separate himself from the pack. Fred Taylor, Corey Dillon. Nothing that them guys did to separate themselves from the pack. Earl Campbell, Eric Dixon, Barry Sanders, O.J. Simpson. Those guys put teams on their back, and they still led the league. And you're playing running back. And it's like, we know we're getting the ball, and he's still gutting your ass. That goes from great line play to a lot of moving and shaking and running jokers over and whatnot, and still averaging 100 yards a game. That's what made the Juice as great as he was. Don't want to hear nothing about all that other shit. Has nothing to do with football. I'm dealing with football. That's why I say everything football. Not everything football and their personal lives. Everything football. That's why someone like Larry Brown is not in the Hall of Fame. That's why Lawrence McCutcheon is not in the Hall of Fame. That's why Fred Taylor. That's why Corey Dillon. That's why those guys are not in the Hall of Fame. They did not put their team on their back and say, follow me. I'll give you a case in point of a player who came out in 71. We were talking about John Riggins. I did a piece on John Riggins some years back. How the fuck John Riggins get in the Hall of Fame? It's that 82 playoff run. No other back has even done what he did, and he did that in his 30s. Most of these guys were done at 25, 26, at 29 years old. John Riggins in 82. $136 carries, 610 yards, 4 touchdowns. Averaging 4.5 a lick, 152 yards a game. And one of the most epic runs on a 4th and 1 that turned into a touchdown to put the game out of reach. Go back to his regular season. In a 3-year stretch, going from what he did there in the play, and he came back the next year at age 34. Led the league at 34 and 35, he would score 38 touchdowns. You go down to his last year, he scored 8 touchdowns, 677 yards, and whatnot. So 8, that's 38, 41, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 46 touchdowns in a 3-year span. And that epic game that he had in the Super Bowl and that epic playoff run from 82. 33 touchdowns in that final. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. He was a Pro Bowler in 75 when he was with the Jets. At age 26. He leaves the game in 80, comes back, didn't do anything really in 81, 82 to 85, 82, a 4-year run where Riggins put up some masterful numbers, and that's why he's in the all-decade team for what he did there in the 80s. That's why. You have to do things like that, man, to get in the Hall. You can't just say because you got these numbers that's supposed to automatically put me in. What did it do? Did it help? Did it propel your team to win championships, playoff games, whatever the case may be? If it didn't do that, dude, you're selling wolf tickets. Okay? You're selling wolf tickets. And this is what I'm talking about. Everybody, I'm not a homer. I'm not a homer. We can go to Tony Dorsett. Great back, 4-time Pro Bowler. I think he may have made All-Pro maybe once, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. Let's look it up and whatnot. But he Dorsett, 4-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro. But Dorsett made a major contribution as a rookie after winning the national championship and winning the Super Bowl. Was in 4, 5, 6 NFC championship games. Went to the Super Bowl twice, won once. Has the longest run in NFL football history. A home run. He is a home run type of guy. All of that. His moves, his speed, and didn't carry the ball a whole bunch. Finished with 12,739 yards, 77 touchdowns. And you can see what he went and did at these particular times. Twice in his career, he led the league. He led the league where he had the longest run. That's why. And he was on winning teams. That's why he's in the Hall. There's guys who I got as many yards. So somebody like Frank Gore, he got as many yards. Frank Gore's not seeing Tony Dorsett. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Niner fans. You hate me again. Sorry. It's not the same, man. It's not the same. It's not the same. It is not the same. Dorsett did something for his first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. No other player up until that time. By this time, NFL's almost 60 some odd years old. Nobody had rushed for 1,000 and some odd yards 5 to 6 years in a row. Would have been eight, nine. He would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It would have been 9 years in a row. He did 5 years in a row. No NFL player up until that particular point in time had done that. You hear me? Jim Brown hadn't even done that. His record when he rushed for 100 yards, I forget what it was. It was a ridiculous amount when he rushed for 100 yards. How many? The winning percentage of what it was. That's a Hall of Famer. You're a difference maker. You're a game changer. You're not one of these guys who just sit up there and hog up stats. You can't hog up stats and then claim I'm going to get in there. They tried to sit up there and say that same shit with Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith deserved, if he wanted to hog up stats and certain that, he's already considered one of the greatest defensive ends. And I told you guys, my defensive ends of the first 100 sophomore years is Bruce Smith, Reggie White. Period in the story. Ain't nobody fucking with them guys. Ain't nobody fucking with them guys. I'll bring them out here today. Ain't nobody fucking with them guys. You gonna tell me about these other guys who put up pussyfooted around and put up stats and then got hurt? It's a part of the game. How can you play? Do you play? When do you play? How do you play? It has to come to a particular time where you have to produce wins. You have to produce wins, man. And when we go to Larry Brown, and I'm talking about Larry Brown and the Cowboys, Larry Brown was a hell of a back, man. I watched this stuff. He's a hard runner, man. He's a tough dude, man. He was tough. He was tough. But his magnum opus was 1972. After that, he was done. Where was the other years at? You don't have them. You don't have them. Because he didn't have them. This is what takes you to the echelon of being a Hall of Famer. And the body would have helped if you won a championship, but even that. And also goes to show you also as well. When I talked about this before, I did a show on this. Because the 3-4 defense became extremely popular in that of the mid-70s to where you see it at now. 2 ends, nose tackle, defensive tackle, whatever. 4 linebackers, 2 outside linebackers, 2 inside. Randy Bradshaw was the first great inside, not middle, inside linebacker. Jack Lambert and all them guys played middle. They played 4-3. 3 linebackers. Mike linebacker. Some say Shirley. We say Sam when I was in school. We played 5-3. And Willie. Mike, Sam, and Willie. Okay. So, Bradshaw, you look up Randy, and I don't know why he's not in the Hall. You're talking about someone that basically was the first one to show you how it was done. Look, the guys who would come along, whether it was Ray Lewis, whether it was Junior Seau. Some of the best inside linebackers, best linebacker, period, best inside linebackers ever played. So when you start talking about those guys like that, Randy Bradshaw came in 74. Who was like I think one year might have had 200 tackles. And you're talking about somebody who was a 7-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first team, and probably a 5-time second team because you had Lambert and all them other guys. He should be in the Hall. If you want to put him first, okay, I ain't going to argue with you about that. Second and third, he should have been in the Hall of Fame. He should have been in the Hall of Fame 20 years ago. Fielded some good teams. Defensive play. When you make Defensive Player of the Year and you are constant and you are a regular in the Pro Bowl and you're still making all-pro teams, there's no reason why you shouldn't be. And he was the first great inside middle linebacker. So when we do this, it is something that has to be spoken about. And he should already be in. Unfortunately, he's not. And so with Bradshaw with 2 first-team All-Pros, He's 3 times. So he made All-Pro team 5 times, 2 times as a first team. Why isn't he not in the Hall of Fame? Orange Crush. Okay? Just good some of his contemporaries. Maybe didn't have the Buckets and Lambert type of, but he was cerebral, made plays, big plays. That's where the problem lies at. So that's what I'm talking about here when we're talking about somebody like that of a Larry Brown. And he said what he said. I get it. All your players are not going to be able to be in there. Sorry, Dolphin fans. Jeff Alford also won't get in there. I get it. I get it. It's not going to happen. You can't put them guys in there. I'm not a homer. So when I talked about Dorsett and those other guys that are putting up phenomenal numbers, that's why Dorsett is not on the All-70s team and he's not on the All-80s team, decade team. He got in when he was supposed to get in because of the things that he did do and how he contributed to winning football. If your team is not winning, then you have to do astronomical things. Dorsett team won, and he still did great things. Maybe didn't ever lead the league, but he was always one of the top 5 or 10 guys in the rushing category. So when you look at Barry Sanders, when you look at Eric Dickerson, when you look at O.J. Simpson, when you look at Earl Campbell, that's how guys who not on traditionally winning teams do what they have to do. And that's why they're in the Hall of Fame. And the other guys on the outside looking in, thinking that it should be in. So now we are in a time, so going down, segue into where Saquon Barkley, to where running backs are being devalued. You could thank Mike Shanahan from that because Mike Shanahan started that shit with Terrell Davis, another guy who only played X amount of years, but did so much in a 4 or 5 year span that you couldn't help but put him in. Offensive Player of the Year twice, 1-time MVP. He got 2 rings, 15, 17, 2,000 yards. What are you going to do? You got to reward him with something. But you can't put guys in here because he works for 1,000 yards for 15 years. And team was constantly 7-9, 7-9, 6-10, this and that, that and that. You're not going in because of that, man. It doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way. Should never, ever work that way. So that's why I say what I say. And that's why I'm always into where one of my most viewed videos is probably when I talk about Roger Craig, who played 11 years and already got 7,000, 8,000 yards rushing. He's a fullback. I don't care. It doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that he was on 3 Super Bowl teams and he had 2 really good seasons. One, and I put the 88 season over the 84, 85 season because he did 1,000. I don't care. Even with 1,000, he still did not have total yards. He still didn't lead the league in total yards. And he caught over 100 balls with 1,000 yards and had 1,000 and some odd yards rushing. Still didn't lead the league in total yards from scrimmage. Now, he did something that never been done before. Then in 88, 3 years later, I think he might have led the league. He had 1,500 yards, this is that, and the other stuff like that or whatever. He rushed his ass on the Offensive Player of the Year. 3 minutes. Say, okay. What kills Craig? He played all those years, and he only had 3,000 yard rushing seasons. That's it. You cannot bypass that or sweep that under the rug. Can't do it. It's not to be done, and it shouldn't be done. That's why he's not in. And I've said this before. I could go into Ricky Williams. I said Ricky Waters. I can go into Shawn Alexander. I can go into Priest Holmes. I can go into a lot of different guys who help Jamal Charles. A lot of those guys, man, they didn't finish that. They did not finish. You have to finish. And they did not finish. And that's why those guys on the outside looking in. And I stick with that all the way to my grave. That's how it works. That's how it works, man. That's how it works. Like I tell you guys all the time, there's no GOAT, there's no greatest of all time. As long as time is still going on, there's no GOAT. I don't call anybody. You say all time. All encompasses everything, not just this section, all. So you can't say that. Numbers online get emotional, people do. I'll holler at you guys later. You guys have a good one.